And we're back, 80 Days Shave 45. We're just tuning in to the All Out Shows. Lord Sear and Rude Jude. Special guest on the phone line.
Yeah, we have author Gordon Young, wrote Tear Down, memoir of a vanishing city. It's about Flint, Michigan. Welcome to the show, Gordon.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to be here. I wish we were talking about something more uplifting than maybe the Flint water crisis, but good thing to discuss at this point.
You must be getting, look, I don't want to sound jaded here, but everybody must be wanting to talk to you about Flint on the heels of this water crisis. You grew up there. When did you start seeing the city go downhill?
Well, I moved with my family to go to college in about 1986, and Flint was already on its downward spiral. I mean, the layoffs started in Flint in about 1972, so things were getting pretty bad by the time I left. The thing that people forget is that Flint at one point, they find this hard to believe, had one of the highest, if not the highest, per capita income levels in the United States, if not the world, in the 60s. So Flint has not always been this troubled place. At one point, it had a huge middle class, a white middle class and a black middle class, and a really prosperous, thriving city. And then it went downhill very fast. It lost about 70,000 GM jobs, and that will do it to you. That's about all it took.
I'm from Pontiac, so I remember it as that's where the Buicks were made. So
yeah.
Did your old man, was he a GM cat as well?
No, he was not. My parents are divorced, so I lived there just with my mom and my brothers and sisters. So my dad's actually a Navy pilot. He has nothing to do. He's like as far from Flint as you can get. But my mom was born and raised there, and she worked in a local hospital. And so we sort of saw the whole trajectory of Flint, because my mom was born in 1930, so she saw this city come up, become very prosperous, and then sort of saw it fall apart, along with me seeing that.
It's tough when a city lives and dies by one company or one industry. Do you think that was one of the big downfalls for Flint, Michigan?
Definitely, I think that was the case. And the thing that sort of bugs me, though, is you hear people say, well, Flint should have diversified. And I'd ask them, well, show me a city that was just booming like that was thinking, someday this may end, maybe we should diversify a little bit here. And even if they wanted to do that, that's not the easiest thing to do. No one in Silicon Valley is right now saying, we should think about something besides this technology thing, just in case that goes away someday. It's just not the way it works. So, yeah, when you lose 70,000 jobs, your city's just going to be decimated. But the problem is, Flint never got any real help from the state or the federal government to stabilize itself after this happened. Local leaders, the mayor and the city council, show me leaders that are good enough to overcome losing 70,000 jobs. It was a special case, and it needed special help, along with a lot of other Rust Belt cities, but they never got it. And we end up in this position that we're in now, like the Flint water crisis. It could have been avoided, but it's sort of predictable, because these bad things happen to Flint because they had a really catastrophic economic collapse, and no one's really thought about long-term ways to fix it.
A lot of these Rust Belt cities they remind me of kind of boom towns of the Wild West, where they do really well and then that shit goes away, and suddenly the citizens are there left there to pick up the pieces.
Exactly.
Did you see that water crisis coming before it happened?
I did not see the water crisis coming, partly because, man, that was something that could have been easily avoided. That was just incompetence. But what I did see coming, and I've seen over the last 30 years, and in Teardown I write about this extensively, is when you leave a city, like you said, it's sort of like an Old West boom town. When the boom's over, if you don't reach a handout to help that city, and you basically just say, good luck, we're washing our hands of you, thanks for making all those cars for us and giving us the middle class and doing all that, helping us in World War II, build tanks, but we're walking away from you now. then bad things like the water crisis are going to happen. Flint's had one of the highest murder rates for 20, 30 years. It has a huge arson problem because it has a huge abandoned house problem, and they go hand in hand. So the water crisis is really high profile. Everyone's talking about it now. It's obviously a tragedy, but there's been other tragedies before this, and no one really seemed to care.
So, do you kind of are you happy that this light is being shined on Rust Belt City, and perhaps we can give it more help, or do you resent the fact, like, because for me, like, you know, I hear motherfuckers, I live out here in L.A. and like, oh, Detroit, it's like, yo, Detroit's been fucked up, they've been not had jobs, now NPR's covering it, and I got to talk to you about this shit. Do you feel the same way with this whole Flint thing?
I have mixed feelings, man. It's really hard for me because part of me feels like, where were you 20 years ago? So, you know, the highest murder rate in the country doesn't get celebrities to care about Flint. It doesn't get NPR and the other news organizations to descend on the city and shine a light on it. So part of me is sort of not bitter, but just kind of like, where were you? Why weren't you here sooner? At the same time, I guess better late than never. I'm sorry it took this horrible tragedy and to have kids drinking lead-poisoned water to get the attention, but as long as we've got it, finally, maybe we can get some sort of tiny sliver of good to come out of this, and they can think about Flint long-term, though. It's just solving the water crisis and then moving on. Flint will be right back in the same spot in 5 or 10 years, so they have to think about a long-term solution for Flint and places like Pontiac, too, man. That is exactly very similar to Flint. Very similar trajectory economically, and some of the suffering happening in Pontiac right now. No one's talking about Pontiac, but they have many of the same problems as Flint.
I think a lot of Rust Belt cities are going through this, and we just didn't get ourselves ready to move. We don't make stuff in America anymore, and we don't know how to transition, and our education system has kind of failed us to get ready for that next step. Like, let's face it, like, these jobs have left and they're not coming back. So now what do we do to move forward? What did you'd been away for a while. You came back, you interviewed a bunch of people that were still living in Flint. Now, to me, Flint's an interesting city because it's kind of this combination of, like, you know, there's old money there, there's rednecks, there's hood motherfuckers, and they're all like, they're all on top of one another. I still go out there and see my cousin, and you know, we end up over at the Walmart, and it's a fucking shit show over there. You know, it's always some weird shit going on. What's it like? What was it like talking to those residents? What did you learn?
Well, it is just what you described. You think Flint would be this sort of homogenized place, and it's not. It's got everything you said because all of these people flooded into Flint when the auto factories were booming. So you have black people from the South. You have white people from the South. You have farmers from Iowa in the Midwest who wanted to get off the farm, so they moved to Flint. You have all these immigrants moving into Flint. So you have this huge melting pot in the city, and to a certain extent, that's still there. And what's weird is Flint always had a huge amount of racial tension and a lot of racial discrimination. It really defined the city in a lot of ways. I know people think, well, it's in the North, it's more enlightened than a lot of the things in the South, but the racial segregation of the city was profound. And yet now, I see people, and this is strange and it was unexpected, people that have a lot of other differences are kind of pulling together because they feel that they're being attacked, they're being abandoned, they're having these horrible things happen to them, and that in an unexpected way is starting to wash away the differences they had elsewhere, and they're starting to come together. I found a city that was fairly united given everything that's happened to it, and that really surprised me.
888-742-3345. We got a couple different people. Yeah, I mean, like, the bottom line is we like to separate ourselves by race, but this is really you go to any country and it's separated by class. That's really what we're separated by. Let's go to Anthony in Connecticut. Go ahead, Ant.
What up, Jude? Just quick question. How do you solve this? I guess you have all this money that leaves and all the jobs that leave, that leave with it. Do you need a government and industry to come in to basically improve the job market? Because if you have no jobs, you have a shrinking tax base, you have shrinking money for education and police, it's just going to get worse.
And that's exactly what's happening. It's this downward spiral, and what happens is the state of Michigan comes in, and their only focus, it seems, is balancing the city budget. But in a place like Flint, how do you balance the city budget? There's no tax base, so you got to lay off cops and firefighters. So then you're laying off cops in the most dangerous city in America, and you're laying off firefighters in a city that has a horrendous arson problem. So that doesn't help. I think it's really tough to bring economic growth to a place like Flint. Let's not kid ourselves. But there are a few things you can do. You can get money to tear down the abandoned houses where no one's going to move into them. They're just crime incubators. The other thing you can do is you can kind of figure out a way to keep more police and firefighters on the streets to at least stabilize the city so that it would be the right place where there actually could be economic growth. It's not guaranteed, but right now, who in their right mind would move their business to Flint because of all the things the caller just described? So you have to stabilize the city before you can even think about bringing more jobs there.
The downtown was looking good last time I was there. They had a fucking farmer's market. It looks like they're trying. It's a long way away. It's weird. I'm seeing people build restaurants, but we don't make anything over there anymore. So it's just weird. It's kind of weird. Let's go to Brian in Fresno. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, man, I just wanted to say that I understand, about the situation. It's been talked about for some time now. It's been on the news, MSNBC. And my issue is with us black folks is that we have fell asleep at the switch, and we don't know how to mobilize and stand up and really demand stuff that we need in regards to this situation in Flint. And I'm just appalled at how long it's taken for folks to to mobilize and really come together and demand what we need. And outside individuals, the sports individuals, the black men that's on the NBA and all them teams, they're not doing anything, and they got more power. So it's just a mobilized thing. We're responsible as well. And because we fell asleep at the switch, they're doing anything they want to do with us as blatant as possible, right in our face. And they're saying, because you're asleep, you're not going to get to do anything about it. We do what we want to do. And that's just what it is. These are babies that is affected with this. Families. And some lady lost she had some babies, and two of the babies that she had is affected by the situation. And so I'm just saying they're doing anything they want to do as blatantly as possible, because all of us are leaders in that city. There's just not all of them. I know the lady, the mayor. All of them are just asleep at the switch and just allowing things to pop off. That's my...
All right, so what do you say to that?
I think I can see how people would have that view of the city. On the ground in Flint, the thing that I found was people trying to get together, people trying to do something against this, but feeling overwhelmed. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but I'm saying people who don't have jobs, they're struggling just to put food on the table. They're trying to get together with their neighbors and do something about their neighborhood, or they're mad about the way the state's treating them or how the city's doing things. But it just seems so overwhelming. If you drive through the worst neighborhoods of Flint, the abandonment, they just feel overwhelmed sometimes. And I'm just speaking of the few people that I know personally in Flint. I understand the frustration of we're not gathering together to do this, but
I mean, because at one point it sounds a bit patronizing, and the other it's like we got to find a nice balance of like, because I don't know about just Flint, but like America, like if it seems to me like if we're worried about the people, like the government and stuff to look out for us, they kind of don't. So we almost have to be strong and be able to look out for ourselves in a lot of ways. And I don't know how that happens, though, like, to be real with you. Like, I don't know how that happens, but it seems to me like whenever we let these motherfuckers in charge, we get dirty ass water.
No, I know, because who do you turn to? So you might think you want to turn to the government for help. Well, the state of Michigan effectively just poisoned your entire city, whether it was incompetence or whatever reason it was, whether you think it was environmental racism, whether you think it was like active racism, or if you think they just didn't know what they were doing. But the thing I see, and